Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of I'm Here Too, Taking the Fork in the Road, a conversation with Gene Gurkoff. Gene is the founder of Charity Miles, an app that enables people to raise money and awareness for charity when they walk, run, or bike. Charity Miles has had millions of members and has partnered with many of the world's top charities and companies. Gene started Charity Miles in honor of his grandfather, who had Parkinson's disease. Gene also hosts a podcast, The Extra Mile, where he interviews people who are going the extra mile for health and to make an impact. Gene records these conversations while out on a run or walk with his guests. True to form, while I was in the studio for this conversation, Gene was outside enjoying the fall weather in Montclair, New Jersey. Montclair, New Jersey is actually where it all started for me and Gene, back in the 90s when we were in middle school together. Many years and many miles have passed since then, but it was a blast to catch up with Jersey Gene and find out where the roads have taken him. From leaving Big Law to founding Charity Miles to lessons learned from Seth Godin, Gene's commitment to stewarding the stories of others, his desire to make an impact even when the going gets tough, and his curiosity about the ways habits and rituals inform our ability to persevere and live meaningfully shines through. If you're someone who wants to learn more about building a company or a community, or if you're wondering about how to get past the Monday crossword puzzle, or if you're a fan of Jersey, The Sopranos, or Bruce Springsteen, then I think you're really going to like this conversation. Off we go. Enjoy. Gene Gurkoff, thank you so much for joining me on I'm Here Too.
This is probably like one of the highlights of my year, getting to see you and catch up with you and be here with you today. So thank you so much for having me, Anna.
Awesome. All right. So for those who are listening or watching, Gene and I went to middle school together. But the last time I saw you, and I know this because my phone told me, was May 14th, 2012. And it was a total chance encounter. We were both on an Amtrak train somewhere around New Rochelle. And I
God's
don't think we
country.
exactly. We hadn't seen or spoken to each other in any real way since my Sweet 16. Let's call that back in the late 90s. But I remember just bumping into you and feeling like no time had passed. Like I looked at our photo that we took and we sent to our moms. Um, we're both wearing business casual. You had a tie on. I'm like all like spiffed out. But these days, it seems like we've both, pivoted, at least in terms of our attire and maybe even our careers. Um, I want to talk about Charity Miles in a minute, but can you share a little bit about what you've been up to career wise leading up to founding Charity Miles?
Since then, I was a lawyer for a number of years. I worked at some of the big law firms in New York City, and I enjoyed doing that. Um, and kind of parallel to that, when I was in law school, I started to run marathons to raise money for Parkinson's disease because my grandfather had Parkinson's. And I got very involved with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I started their Team Fox, which is their grassroots fundraising arm. Um, and I started to do a lot of pro bono legal work for them. And then at the law firm that I was at, like because I was doing pro bono work for Michael J. Fox, I would do pro bono work for a lot of other charities. And I just got very interested in that. And I kept running marathons, which I've become very passionate about. It's something that I really enjoy doing. And kind of when iPhones came out and everyone was talking about apps, I was like, oh, I could make an app that people like me running for charity, we could use this and we could get companies to sponsor us and we could raise more money. And that was kind of like this idea that I had, which led me to start Charity Miles. And I've been doing that for the last 13 years, which I can't believe I've been doing it for 13 years. So that's what I do. That's been my
Um,
journey.
That's amazing. I'm curious, it doesn't sound like it was so much like a hard right out of Big Law and into being a founder, but like what was that journey like for you?
Oh, no, it was like right out of Big Law into being a founder. It was very abrupt, and it's not something that I recommend for anybody, and something that, when in hindsight, I wouldn't have done that way because, like, you go from like total security to total insecurity, and it was very hard. I made like a gazillion mistakes along the way, and so I won't take up like this whole podcast with all the mistakes, but that was definitely. a lot of, I was very naive. I thought I had this great idea. Everyone I told the idea to thought it was great. And I was like, I had visions in my head of like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be the next, Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. And that didn't really pan out. And things were and have been very challenging ever since without that kind of big law security. So not the path that I would recommend for anybody else.
It's interesting though that you talk about that naivete because I left practicing law. I think I spent a lot less time than you. I think it was like a year and nine
Uh-huh.
months according to LinkedIn. But like I decided to leave the big law firm and go work at Princeton.
Hmm.
And at the time it was going from, basically making half of what I was making at the law firm. And
Right.
my parents were like, "Are you sure you're going to do this?" And I was like, "Oh, I can always go back to the law firm."
Hmm.
This was 2006. And fast forward to 2008, and I remember getting calls from people like at law firms that were like, "Wow, man, this is hard. They are
Hmm.
firing people." And I got a similar call in 2008, different vibe that was like, "Hey, Ara, would you come and be our first head of diversity at the law firm?"
Hmm.
And I always kind of think back to that because what you said is resonating with me in terms of sometimes we make these leaps with total, lack of understanding of where we're leaping, and
Right.
yet the leap like lands us where we need to be, even if it's hard. I don't know if that
Yeah. I guess there's no way to test the counterfactual, I guess.
true.
But yeah, I'm still doing it. There's been a number of times that we've almost been dead with charity miles, but somehow managed to keep it going. So I love it. It's like been an incredible honor for me to kind of be a steward of this community that has grown in charity miles. And I'm gonna keep it going as long as I can.
I love that. And just for people who don't know, so I'm going to give a very high level summary and Jean's going to fill it out for me. But Charity Miles is a free iPhone or Android app, and it enables people to earn corporate sponsorship for charity by walking, running, or biking. Is that the gist? Is there more?
Yeah, it's evolved a little bit since we started it. So it's not just corporate sponsorship now. We also have uh, things for like employee engagement, where like your company will sponsor you, and we have a lot of peer-to-peer fundraising where you can ask your friends and family to donate. But yeah, the original idea was that it was going to be all about corporate sponsors that would fund the app through advertising. Hope you don't mind. There's a train coming by. Not sure if
No
you hear it.
worries.
But try to get that ambiance for you, that Montclair ambiance. And while that worked and we have corporate sponsors, the companies unfortunately don't give us an unlimited amount of money, which I keep trying to find. But so we've started to like expand, or we started a while ago to think about how do we expand the other ways that people can make an impact with their miles.
Got it. So tactically, Gene, I mean, it sounds like you're wearing a lot of hats, founder, CEO, that means something different to everybody. But what for you are the key things? Like, how do you spend your days?
Um, yeah, I wear a lot of hats. We're a really small team. Spend my days, servicing our current partners and our clients, um, selling new partners and clients, making sure the app works, dealing with any technical things that come up, payroll, like, all of the things.
All
So
the things.
I'm very much in in with my hands in the clay all the time.
Uh-huh. Hands in the clay and feet on the ground.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I want to talk about um, your podcast. So
Hmm.
I knew about the app, but I didn't realize that you've actually been doing a podcast since
Yeah.
2017.
Me neither.
Um,
I didn't realize it had been that long either until you had mentioned that to me the other day.
Wow, it's I like that. I like that I can remind you of things. It's called The Extra Mile, and you interview people who are going the extra mile for health and to make an impact. And I was saying before we started recording, true to your brand, you record these interviews on an actual walk or run, and you
Right.
encourage listeners to do the same. And I love that. And I love that you're doing it now
Yep.
with me. Um, walking is so generative. And so you've been doing this like 8 or 9 years and recorded over like 130 conversations. In your trailer from those early days, you mentioned that you were a regular guy and not a professional podcaster.
Just a regular
Okay,
guy
so
from New Jersey.
from New Jersey, I can't forget that. How did you get the podcast started?
Um, well, the podcast kind of grew out of, and I think that you and I share this idea of storytelling. Um, I love, to me, what Charity Miles really is about, not, the way that we just described it. To me, Charity Miles is a storytelling app, and it's a way for people to tell a story through their actions. What are they walking for? What are they running for? What moves them? Not just to other people and what they're sharing on social media, but the story that they tell themselves. And to me, the most important story, the most powerful story is the story that we tell ourselves about who we are, what we value. And I'm just really interested in that. And I think to myself, like, when I wake up in the morning and I go for my run at 5:30, what is the story that I'm telling myself? Or when I am out here on a walk doing this podcast with you, what is the story that I'm telling your listeners about me through the fact that I am out here walking? What is the story that I'm telling myself about me through the fact that I'm out here walking? And in Charity Miles, we have so many amazing people who are doing these incredible things. Some like truly like incredible if like you were to put it on paper, some like just incredible everyday people. And I love hearing their stories. Their stories are what keep me all those times that we've almost been dead. Those are the stories that make me keep it going. And I love to hear those stories. So one way to get people to tell you those stories and tell you about themselves is to ask them to be on a podcast. It's kind of weird to just be like, call someone up and be like, "Hey, tell me about you." But if you're like, "Hey, would you do a podcast with me?" They'll tell you about it. And then also, like, there's a lot of interesting people out there that I would like to get to know and to meet and learn from. But like, they're important people, and a lot of times you can't just call them and like have a conversation. But if you call them and say, "Hey," or email them and ask them to be on your podcast, they're willing to talk to you for an hour. So it's a great way to like meet interesting people and learn from them and get like a 3 hours worth of like insight. Um, and then kind of, so that was like the general idea, but then also one of the reasons that I do it, there's a lot of reasons that I do it walking, not just because it's on brand, but or running. So many of my best friends are people that I run with. And I think that we would have these amazing conversations. Like when I lived in the city, I would run with this group of guys and one young woman, and we were just totally different people. That if you thought like one was a Catholic priest, one was this like big kind of, I don't know how to describe him, but like just like a average Joe, like but like the kind of guy who's just gonna like go and watch like football on the weekends at like the sports bar. Um, drove a Hummer. Another, me like ultra liberal Jew from neurotic Jew from New Jersey, like just like a completely diverse group of people, and we would go out on runs and have very amazing, interesting conversations. And there's something to I think that's different when you're walking with somebody, you're moving with somebody. That's like your bodies are moving in the same direction. You have a similar rhythm to your pace. Your breath is in rhythm. There's kind of pheromones going back and forth between you. The oxytocin is passing between you or whatever. Like there's just something about that. It's kind of like dancing, like any being in a concert with somebody or, just that physical journey together, I think produces a different type of a conversation than one where you're like sitting at a coffee table together, which is kind of like oppositional, like you're across from each other. Um, Not that you can't have a great conversation like that. There's obviously plenty of great conversations that happen like that. But I just thought that that would be really cool to do. And before COVID, all of the interviews were done in person, and I had like a handheld recorder, and I insisted on that it would be in person. But then since COVID, I adapted like everyone else and started doing them on Zoom, and that's actually been great too because it helps me be able to have conversations where I don't have to like travel across the country or you know things like that with people. So that's the idea of the podcast. We've interviewed some really interesting people. And I could tell you so many different stories of them, but I won't, unless there's any that you have in mind that you want to go over. I could take up the rest of the podcast talking about all the amazing people in our community. I'll say we've had 8 people walk or run across the United States with charity miles. One is was an 11-year-old boy. His name is Noah Barnes. He's 18 now. And we're still friends. I'm still friends with his family. I text with his parents, him all the time. And, he was one of the people that I went down and walked with him in Nashville when they were passing through Nashville, and then in Denver, and then on the last day in Blaine, Washington. He didn't just go across the country. He went from Key West to the northwest tip of Washington State. So he went diagonal. All the other people went across. We've had some really interesting people in our community, and I feel like I said, like I think I mentioned before, like I feel like I'm like the steward of the community. I'm like a part of the community, and I feel like it's like the greatest privilege of my life to like kind of be the steward of all these stories.
I really love that, Gene. And I like the mix of people that you interview. And, speaking of one of the people I would have thought was really hard to access is Seth Godin. So back in college, I was the sales director of the radio station. And even though growing up, or maybe because of it, my dad, he had a marketing communications firm. And so I've always been curious about like, how do you get the right ideas or products or services to the right
Hmm.
people to help them do better, be better? And I'm also finding though that it's easier to market things that I did not create. And so as I've got this podcast and as I've got these novels, I'm realizing like I gotta sort of do a little bit more of a self-directed marketing crash course. And so I was prepping for this conversation and I noticed that you had an interview with Seth Godin back in 2024. And I
Hmm.
actually just finished his book, This is Marketing.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, well, who better, right? Gene introduced me to Seth. But the thing that I loved, Gene, was that the thing that I took away had nothing to do with marketing. It
Yeah.
was actually about when you asked Seth something and he started talking about style canoeing.
Yeah.
And he said, that the secret is it's about balance and posture and belief and confidence and deciding that you want to dance with gravity and possibilities.
Hmm.
And when you heard it, initially you mentioned running. And I know we've been talking about how you run and do marathons, but like, do you approach it like style canoeing or do you think of it some other way?
Well, I thought that when I think back to that interview, I wish that I spent the whole rest of the interview talking about style canoeing with him because I think that there's so much more I would have liked to have talked about. When I go back and I listen to that, I'm like, oh man, there's so many more questions I want to ask about style canoeing. Um, I don't. The thing that I really resonated with him about the style canoeing was being out, and he was talking about being out on the river by himself early in the morning, no one else is around. And he lives basically on like the Hudson River in like a suburb of the city, Croton on the Hudson, or I think it's Croton on the Hudson where he lives, which is like a town kind of like Montclair. It's got like the cool little shops and the bakeries and the restaurants, and it's a suburb. It's in Westchester, so it's like there's a lot going on, a lot going on up there. It's not like the boonies, and it's the Hudson River. It's not like, you know, a little river somewhere. But like you're out there all alone, and it's like this moment. It's kind of like one of the reasons I like to get out really early in the morning is I just like the fact that like I'm out there all alone, and it's like it's really cool feeling to be like I would walk out my door and there'll like be deer and bunnies and foxes, and it's like this kind of cool special moment that I have by myself in the town. And I really resonated with him on that feeling of that like moment with nature first thing in the morning by yourself. Um, Even when I would run in the city, I would run really early and I'd be like the first person in Central Park. I would try to be like the first person in Central Park, um, just to be there. by myself. So that really I resonated with. But yeah, there is a lot, running definitely is a lot about balance. Um, and I wish that I had kind of gone into that a lot more with him just to talk about the style canoeing. But he was somebody that, I had reached out to him because um, he had tried to develop a charity platform. I can't exactly remember what it did, but he was excited about it and he was promoting it on one of my friends' podcasts. When I heard about it, I wanted to interview him about it. And that was like my way into like get him, for an interview because he's not somebody who's otherwise part of our community. But he's like one of those people where it's like, hey, Seth Godin probably wouldn't meet with me for an hour, but if I asked him to be on my podcast, maybe he would. And he did. And he was very generous with his time. But I think, the charity idea that he realized that maybe it wasn't going to work, and he was on to his new book, which is called "This Is Strategy." And so that's what I think he really wanted to talk about. And so we kind of pivoted off of the style canoeing to get more into what he was trying to talk about with his new book. Um, but yeah, I think that there was a lot more I would have liked to have gone into about the style canoeing.
Have you ever tried style canoeing?
No, I just like canoed at summer camp, like try not to tip over. Have you?
I am not. I'm in a similar literal boat.
Yeah,
No style, just canoeing and
yeah,
trying to stay afloat.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
Gene, I've been curious because I've been following you, on social media, and you do post really regularly about your practice of running. Like, are you ever just like mornings where you're like, I'm not doing this. I don't feel like it.
All the time. Yeah, it's getting started, getting up early in the morning is really, really hard. And you're tired and you're up late last night or whatever. It's hard to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So, yeah, and today was like cold and kind of rainy a little bit. So, yeah, all the time. But, there's certain things like I have a friend that I ran with this morning, so I know she's going to be out there. I can't sleep in. Um, Having like a goal that I'm training for keeps me accountable. And then once I am out there, I'm so happy that I got out there. But yeah, there's a lot that um, it's hard to get up in the morning.
Okay, good. I was beginning to think it was just I'm curious about like this idea of I don't like to call it work-life balance. Like my stepmom always said,
Mhm,
forget balance and try happiness. And so
mhm,
I'm just
mm.
curious for you, it feels like, Charity Miles it seems like a huge part of your life, but is it? Like, how do you think about it in relation to the rest of your life?
I mean, other than my family, it's like the biggest part of probably my my day, my life. So yeah, it's something that I'm really proud of. It's become a part of my identity. It's definitely part of the story that I tell myself about who I am. And yeah, I'm not sure so much about, again, bring it back to the balance. Like I'm not sure how much balance there is with it. I'm always trying to get more balance. I think gotten a lot better with it over the years, but especially like early on, like I could never turn my brain off. I'd always be thinking about it. Abby would be talking to me and I would realize like I haven't heard anything that she just said. And now like I'm especially trying to like on the weekends, like I don't open my computer. Especially with my also just not even with charity miles, but like the phone, just like trying to like get a lot more balance with the phone and like not sleeping with my phone in the bedroom, you know, putting the phone away, only using it for work. Um, you mentioned like my social media, like I really only post because of charity miles. I think if I didn't have charity miles, I wouldn't do any posting. But like I said, like I love to be a part of the charity miles community, and that's kind of how we interact. So really trying to get more balance with, you know, putting the technology away and being present with my family and myself and my community.
I know we mentioned that we knew each other in middle school. Like, did middle
Hmm.
school Gene, is he still part of that story or like what's changed? Because you feel like the person I knew, but I'm sure things have changed along the way or things have stayed the same. Like
Oh no,
where it
I'm
was.
just as insecure as I was in middle school. Um, uh, yeah, I think I'm probably still the same person. I mean, I've obviously grown in lots of different ways, but deep down, I'm sure I'm still the same person. And I'm walking now in Anderson Park, which is very close to our middle school. Um, I run often around the park where you and I used to have to run the mile at gym, and I think about that all the time. And yeah, I think I'm still the same guy. Like I don't think there's certain parts of you that grow and change, and there's certain parts of you that don't. There's so actually, I don't know if you know this about Montclair, but Yogi Berra. Do you know who Yogi? He used to live here. He's from Montclair, and actually, Margaret Johnson's house is by his house.
Yeah, 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 on Highland.
Um, yep. So Yogi Berra is known for a lot of things. One of his funny sayings. He's got a yogiisms where he says, it's not over till it's over, or different things that kind of don't make any sense but are funny, and they kind of do have like a hidden meaning to them. One of the things that he's known for is a saying where he says, "When you come to a fork in the road, take it." And that sounds very like Robert Frost. When you come, I was the path diverged in the woods, and I took the one, and it made all the difference. The one less traveled, but he doesn't tell you which way to go in the fork. Um, and so it kind of has no meaning to it. But what some people in Montclair know is that when you kind of get to his street, there's a street. I think it's called Edgewood. I can't remember that. They actually renamed it Yogi Berra Way. There's an actual fork in the road, and either way you go, it will take you to his house. So that's how he would give directions to his house. Is he would say, when you come to the fork in the road, take it, because it doesn't matter which way you go, it'll still take you to his house. So that to me is taken as meaning as like no matter what fork in the road, the ways that all the different decisions that I made and all the forks in the roads that I've taken, like it still brought me back here, still brought me back to where we grew up, still brought me back home. So I think that, yeah, and all the different ways that I've, you know, grown or changed and learned and all the things that we've done since middle school, which is a long time ago, I'm still middle school Gene.
Middle school Gene, I love it. All right, middle school Gene, we're going to do a lightning round. And this is where I ask, similar questions of all of my guests. So, first one has to do with preoccupations. So, this
Yeah.
is something that I learned in a creative writing course when I was at Princeton.
Hmm.
But essentially, um, identifying the preoccupations as things that we come back to over and over again in the spirit of storytelling, right? The stories we tell ourselves, the
Hmm.
stories we tell others. And like you and I, if we're in the business of storytelling, the stories we create for others to consume, right? So, um, some of mine include organized animal and people crime networks.
What does that
Um,
mean?
so you and I have talked about The Sopranos, but I have this series that I wrote called Tales from the Alley, Tails,
Ah,
based off of our cat, our now deceased cat, Harriet, who came to us as Altonio. And she basically runs a network of a motley crew of animals around Brooklyn. Porkchpo Alley is where she's running
love
her
this.
crew. Anyway, we could go full on into that, but essentially that's one. I'm also really interested in ancestors, and then, like I mentioned, work life integration. So these are kind of things that come up for me over and over. Curious, to the extent you haven't talked, like what's one of your preoccupations?
Um, it's a good question. This is supposed to be a lightning round, so I apologize for the long pause. I think there's a lot of things that these days preoccupied with. Well, ever since starting Charity Miles, I'm very interested, and I think a lot about. I'm not sure how this relates to storytelling, although I do talk about it a lot. Is behavior design and habit formation, and how like our habits and the things that we do every day, those that essentially is the story that we tell ourselves. Um, and so, with Charity Miles, when we started it, we had a lot of acclaim and we were written up a lot and we had a lot of downloads and all that, but people would always tell me that they would forget to use it, that they would go for a run and they would forget to start it. They would go for a walk and they would forget to start it. So I became obsessed with how do I make it so that people don't forget to use it? And I haven't figured that out yet. But it led me into like learning all about habit formation and habit design and behavior design. And I got to meet like the main guys who like are in Silicon Valley that are like they wrote the book on habit design and like they're the reason that like Instagram is so addictive and all that. And I got to become friendly with them and learn from them. And so I'm just like obsessed with habits and behavior. And lately I've been thinking a lot about with charity miles that it's not about habits because habits are mindless behaviors that are kind of like automatic. And they're usually done in anticipation of an immediate reward. Whereas I think something like charity miles or like the behaviors that really matter are mindful behaviors and not done in anticipation of an immediate reward, but done with some deeper future aspiration in mind. And so I think lately I've become very preoccupied not with habits, but with rituals. Because I think that rituals are like, what are the rituals that we do? We just had Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, or Halloween's coming up, or Thanksgiving. Like, what are all going to a concert, going for a morning run? To me, like you asked about morning run, like people talk about running as like a habit. I don't know how it could ever be a habit for me because it's definitely not mindless. It takes a lot of mindfulness to drag my ass out of bed at 5:30 in the morning. So to me, that's like more of a ritual. And I think that the stories that we tell ourselves through habits and the stories that we tell ourselves through rituals, those are different types of stories. And I guess I'm very interested, or I'm not sure if preoccupied is the word, but like I spend a lot of time thinking about it. So maybe preoccupied is the word. I'm very interested in those different types of stories that we tell ourselves through our habits or our rituals.
I like that distinction between a ritual and a habit, and I like how you applied it to running because I think it does actually share two different ways people might approach the same
Yeah.
activity. Yeah. Wow.
So
All right. Thank you. Superpowers. So one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is learning, what makes people unique. And everybody has something that they're really good at, that different people seek them out for, that makes them stand out. So I'm curious about, what's one of your superpowers?
I think I don't know if I would call it a superpower, but one of the things that I've always fallen back on is perseverance and endurance. So actually, I think about it a lot. Whenever I run past Edgemont Park, which like I said, is where you and I used to run the mile together in middle school, I was never good. I was a mediocre soccer player. I was a terrible basketball player. I was a mediocre. I was not good at sports. I was not good at any of the stuff in gym or in the presidential physical fitness test that we used to have to do. I think I remember you being very good at the flexed arm hang. Um, I couldn't do that at all, but I could outlast people. So if like a game went to 1,000, I would win. Or if there was no time limit on a game, like I would be the last person standing. So like that's so when we would run the mile, like I would always be the first in the mile because like I was just willing to endure the pain. So I think that that's maybe I don't know if it's a superpower. Some ways it's like probably the opposite of a superpower. It's like my weakness is like sometimes you endure the pain for too much. But I think that that's one of the things that I'm able to draw from is just endurance.
And, obviously sometimes strengths do become overused, but they're still strengths. And you've mentioned, what it takes to keep charity miles going. And it feels like in the hands of somebody else, it might not still be around, right?
It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this is an ask.
Hmm.
Um, this podcast, similar to Charity Miles, I hope it's about community, bringing people together to learn
Hmm.
and share and be inspired. And you're giving us a lot during this conversation, and you're very, very generous with your time and your resources. So I want to turn it to the audience. What's something that they can do for you?
I'm not sure what they could do for me or for Charity Mile. Obviously, if anybody, so actually another thing that I've learned about in behavior design is that you don't try to get people to do anything that they don't otherwise want to do. That was like a lesson that I keep having to learn. Like, you know, when you're making an app, you try to guide people in a certain direction, but like you can't get people to do something that they don't want to do. And you just try to help people be successful at something that they already want to do. So I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, this is something you could do for me. But if you are the type of person that does want to make an impact for a charity that you care about, um, and you want an easy way to do that, I would invite you to join us with Charity Miles. And I would invite you to think about actually one of the last podcasts that I did was with somebody from GoFundMe, the senior strategy advisor at GoFundMe. And when I asked her what her call to action was, I think I'm going to make the same call to action, which is whatever charity it is that you do care about, reach out to them and ask them how you can show up for them in another way that you are currently showing up for them. If you're a donor, if you're an advocate, if you're a volunteer, is there another way that you can show up for them that would be meaningful to them? And not just to think about, your involvement with them as like a donation that you make over the holidays or a one time a year that you volunteer type of thing. So I think that would be the call to action is if there is a cause that you care about, ask that charity how you can be more helpful with them.
Like that. So this one, as you may guess, is one of my favorite, and it's the last question in the lightning round.
Yeah.
It's a read, a listen, a watch. There is so much
Read.
content and not enough time. So I'm
Hmm.
curious, what is something you're reading, listening to, or watching that others might enjoy?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, like I've been really trying to be off my phone, so I've been doing a lot of more reading lately. Um, and actually, I'm been trying to do a lot of crossword puzzles lately. My wife Abby is like amazing at crossword puzzles. She does. She's got like books of the Sunday Times puzzles and just flies through them. Growing up, my dad does the Sunday Times every week, and it takes him hours to do it. Abby just flies through them. And so lately I've been trying I've got like the book of Monday puzzles, which is the easiest book. So I've been trying to like teach myself how to do that. I've been doing more of that than the actual reading, but I have been reading a lot lately. Um, well, my favorite book, if anybody is into running, is called Once a Runner. Highly recommend it. Great book. And then I just read The Anxious Generation, which is again goes back to like phones and like how it's impacting kids today, which I think was very interesting and timely, which I would recommend for people as well.
Awesome. I'm curious about crossword puzzles. Is there a technique, or do you just have to know things?
There's definitely a technique, but I think that when like Abby, she's done so many of them, there's certain clues that she just knows the answer to. And then there's some things that you have to know. Like I get tripped up all the time, like or not tripped up, but like they say like Mozart's blank, you know, song like like fill in the blank and like the other titles words of the name of the song. It's like, I don't know what the names of Mozart songs. Like, how am I gonna know that? Or, you know, director of some random movie that I never heard of. I'm like, I don't know that. But, they sometimes will have, things that I do know the answer to. So that makes it easy. But then you kind of got to use it all to like piece it together. But there's definitely a lot of technique to it. And Abby's really good at it.
All right. Well, maybe I'll have to have
Yeah.
Abby on and we can talk crosswords. I am notoriously not great. I just sort of start, and then
Yeah.
when I have nothing more I know, I'm like, okay, on to the next thing. Awesome. Well, Gene, this has been super fun. I really appreciate you bringing me back to where it all started in Montclair
Yeah.
and sharing some wisdom.
Was there a listen and a watch that I was supposed to give you?
Oh, sure. I didn't want to pressure though. You got
Oh,
to listen, you got to watch.
well, yeah. Well, just since we're talking about New Jersey, obviously watch The Sopranos and
Obviously.
listen. E Street Radio on Sirius is great. And then if you get, there's an app called Nugs, NUGS.net, and you can get like all of Bruce Springsteen's concerts. So highly recommend it.
You are the ultimate Jersey guy, Gene. Jersey Gene. Jersey Gene.
Well, that goes into my ritual every morning. I listen to Bruce Springsteen when I run. So that's like part of the ritual.
I love it. Thank you for sharing so much, Gene. It's
Thank
really
you.
great to catch up.
It's great to see you. And thanks to everybody for listening. And every mile matters.
Love it. Well, that's all for this episode of I'm Here Too. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation. Please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss the next conversation. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.